Please join me for a discussion with my father, David Craig. Dad, can you tell me about the love affair with the church?
Surely I can, baby. I can tell you all about that. And the reason I can tell you that is Jesus gave us a great example, and it was the husband to the wife. So Jesus is the head of the church, like a man is the head of the family. And so what does a man do for his family? A man gives everything to his wife and everything to his children. So as the head, he provides all, he protects all, he gives instruction, he gives direction, he gives protection. He does all of those things. And so that demonstrates his love to that woman. She feels secure because he's there protecting her. She feels blessed because he's providing for her. She feels nurtured because he speaks to her and cares about her and gives her direction. And so likewise, Jesus does the same thing for the church. Jesus protects the church. If you were to read throughout the Old Testament, you'd find out that God always protected his people. But then you would find that God also blessed his people. If they had a financial need, he took care of that need. If they had a physical need, he took care of that need. If they had a healing, he took care of that. Whatever their need was, whether it was food, made no difference to him. He made sure that was well taken care of. But then he did something else. He always spoke to them face to face. If he couldn't do it to all people face to face, he would at least do it to a leader. But it's Jesus' desire to go more than just through a prophet. Jesus wants to speak to everybody in the family. So when the man's talking to the family, sometimes he's talking to the wife and she'll bring it down to the family. But oftentimes he wants to have a family affair. He wants everybody to be there so he can talk to everybody at the same time. Well, that's the way Jesus is. Jesus wants to talk to his body. He wants to talk to his family. He wants to talk to the church. And the book of Colossians says about Jesus that he's the head of the church. Some people said that they don't like that. They don't like anybody being their boss. Well, that's a problem with the world today because they don't understand the protection. They don't understand the provision. They don't understand the blessing. And so if they did, they'd go, wow, I'd like to have Jesus as the head of the church. Now I understand what it means for him to love me. He loves me because he gave himself for me. In other words, anything and everything that he has is now mine. Everything. He didn't hold anything back. Everything he has is mine. He laid down his life for me. Then he did something for me way beyond what a natural daddy can do for his children or what a man can do for his wife. He actually changed our nature. And he did that by laying his life down so that God could raise it up again and take that life and put it inside of us. Jesus could actually come and live inside of us. And from that standpoint, there is no greater demonstration of love because he actually gave us his life. He didn't give of his life, he gave us his life. And that's very important because there are a lot of people that can give you of their life. They can give you their philosophies, they can give you a lot of their ideals, but they can't give you their life. Jesus said, I love you so much, I'm going to take care of this in such a way that I'm not only give you of myself, I'm going to give you myself. And because I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it, I can actually come and live inside of you. So the life that you now live from now on will not be a struggle with me because we will not be at a distance from one another. We'll be very close, and we'll be so close that we can communicate spirit to spirit. I'm going to live inside of you, and I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to nurture you, and I'm going to give you direction. I'm going to give you correction. I'm going to tell you what it takes to be a success in life. I'm going to do everything it is necessary to make you just like myself. Now, to me, that's a great demonstration of God's love for the church. Christ gave himself to us so that he could come and live inside of us so that we could be just like he is.
Dad, has there ever been a time where the church has been unfaithful?
Oh, yeah, baby, it's sad, but it's true. You know, the church oftentimes acts just like we do in the natural. It's a shame. We're a supernatural body. We're a supernatural group of people. But oftentimes the church acts just like people do in the natural world. And they get into a good relationship with Jesus, and they have a great thing going with him. And he does, like what we said. He brings provision. What do they need? Do they need food? He has food for them. Do they need health? He provides health. He's got the best healthcare system in the world. Do they need peace? He makes sure that there's no disturbance around them. He gives them peace. He said, I give my beloved sweet sleep. Whatever he has that is available to them, he makes sure that they get it. And they take it, and they use it, and they grow from it. They become stronger. They become wiser. And then all of a sudden, as people do foolishly, their eyes are taken away by somebody else and they're pulled in another direction. And if Jesus can't call them back with His loving care, and He doesn't whip them. Now, if He can't call them back by correction and by blessing, they just continue to drift, and they drift, and they drift until they're out doing just what the world does. And that breaks a great pain to Jesus, because He loves them so much, He will not stop them from turning from Him. He loves them so much, if they want to abandon Him, He lets them abandon Him. He lets them go. And it's a pitiful thing, and it's a painful thing for Him to watch that, because He gave everything to them. He blessed them. He raised them up. He brought them up. They are what they are because of His love given to them. And now they've taken that love and they've abused that love and they take it out into the world. And so, the church does that on more occasions. And the Bible calls that a backslider, a person that is backslidden, a person that is no longer walking where they ought to walk. If you read back in the Old Testament, even back in the book of Genesis, you see that Adam and Eve were made in the image and likeness of God, and God had every provision for them, every provision. If it was gold and silver and precious stones, it was all right there in the garden. If it was the food they liked of any type, it was all right there in the garden. If it was the correct temperature, we're always hassling over the heat and air conditioning, but He had it in a beautiful way. Was it in clothing? Whatever they were dressed in God's glory, they had the best. There was nothing that they could have wanted, nothing that could have made them better that He didn't provide for them. He gave it all to them. But then there was a deceiver came along, and the deceiver said, "Has God really said?" And so you see from that story, just from that little deceptive voice, they were able to be drawn away and begin to question God. Did God really say that? And they start turning their ear like, God, are you really real? Are you really who you say you are? Can I really trust you? God, I heard another voice. And they begin to drift away. So you've got that Bible story right there that is so clear in the demonstration of how the church walks away from their lover. Jesus is the lover of our soul, and they walk away from their lover. And guess what? When they do, they always get into trouble. And then they have to come back and they have to get everything worked out. It's a very painful affair. But you know what? God loves them a lot. How much? He washes them again in the water of the Word. He washes them again with the shed blood of the Lamb. He gets them all cleaned up, and He brings them back in, baby, in such a position as if they'd never been gone. Now, that's tremendous. But now they are now dealing with bruises that they never had before. It's just like in an adulterous relationship. They're having to overcome the pain. They're having to overcome the scars. They've got these things running inside their minds. Wonder if Jesus really trusts me. Does He still trust me? And so there are painful events now because of that. But yes, the church does commit adultery in the sense that it goes out on the Lord, turns away from Him, does its own thing. But does God love them? Yes. Does God take them back? Yes. Does God force them to come back? No. That is probably the scariest thing about this relationship. God will not make you serve Him. He gives you an opportunity to come back. And when you come back to Him, He doesn't bring up the past. He will not bring up the past, but everybody won't come back.
Did Hosea have a problem with his wife?
Yeah, Hosea had a problem. I mean, man, he had a real problem, and God set the whole deal up as an illustration. What God did is said, Hosea, I want you to go marry a whore. I want you to go marry a prostitute. Now, a lot of people don't like to use that word whore because it's real ugly. I mean, it talks about an ugly lifestyle and causes a lot of pain, because when you think of a person that's a whore, you think of somebody that's abandoned their relationship with their husband, they've abandoned their relationship with their family, they're wasting their life in the world. And so the church had gotten so far off that God said, hey, I want a living demonstration. I want an illustration that nobody can deny. I want an illustration that is so plain that anybody can understand this illustration. And He said, Hosea, you're a prophet. You represent me, and I want you to do something. I want you to go out into the world, and I want you to find a prostitute. I want you to find a woman who's sold out to whoredom. I want you to find somebody that's rough as a cob, as we used to say in the world, just rough as can be, and I want you to marry her. Now, honestly, I would have to think that Hosea might have had a couple of questions running through his mind when he was given that instruction, but he did so. He went out and he married a woman named Gomer, and he brought her into his house, and he bore children by her, and he did just what we said earlier. He brought the church up. He brought the woman up. He brought her out of that darkness, brought her out of that place of pain, and He brought her into a place of blessing. He brought her into a place of honor. And so he raised her up, and he kept raising her up, and he kept raising her up. But then she got drawn away by the world. And she went back out into the world, and she got out into the world, and she started back to that same old lifestyle again. She got out there, and actually she found herself in worse shape than she did before, because once you've been in the presence of God and you go back out from the presence of God, actually you bring more hurt, you bring more pain to yourself, because now you've experienced the goodness of God. Before you knew the goodness of God, you could actually sin without any conscience, because you were a sinner. You had no conscience toward a thing. But once you went back out into the world, now you have a conscience. It's like, God, man, I used to be out here. I used to be doing this kind of stuff, and it never did bother me. Now I'm out here doing this kind of stuff, and it's driving me crazy. What's the deal? Well, the deal is that once you were married to the King, once you were married to the righteous person, once you were in the family of God, you experienced that peace, that joy, that love, that purity, that holiness. You experienced all those things. And then it's like you took something very fresh and very precious and rubbed it down in some grease or some silt, or some dirt or some trash or some ashes or something, and you smudged it. And you changed the whole appearance of the deal. You ruined it. And so that's what happened. And so God said, I want you to demonstrate this so much. I want you to demonstrate this, Hosea, that I love her so much, even though she spread the filth of this world back on her life. She's got herself all messed up. She's gone back into doing it again. She's out there acting worse than she ever did before. She's actually on the slave block now. She's so worn out. She's so broken. Actually, they're going to just sell her like they would sell a common slave. They have her on the block. Now, I want you to go out there and get her, and I want you to buy her back. Well, he went out there, and the understanding is from the Scripture, he actually bought her back with 30 pieces of silver. Why is that important? Because that is the price that was paid for Jesus. When Judas Iscariot turned him in, he was given 30 pieces of silver. So there is a significance here. So Jesus became a bondslave for us. Jesus died for us, and in the same way, he paid for us. So the 30 pieces of silver, actually, because he was dying in our stead, brought us back out of that slavery, brought us up and brought us out. So when he bought her back, she was a mess. Oh, baby, she was a mess. She was a terrible mess. And you know what? He loved her. He took her back home. He cleaned her up. He put her into some new clothes. He put her back and let everybody see her. Hosea's wife's back home. He didn't badmouth her in the community. He never said anything else bad about her. He didn't want her going out running in the world, but he said, honey, you come live with me again. We're going to start all over. We're going to make it all right. We're going to get everything worked out again. And they did. They got everything worked out. And so when God did that, he showed through Hosea that, yeah, my church gets messed up sometime. It really does. And he said, I'm using Hosea as a living example of how this works. The relationship of the husband to the wife, the relationship of the husband and wife to the world, what the husband and wife think about one another, what the world thinks about them, what they think about the world. So he brought out a real living demonstration of this through Hosea. Sadly, yeah, Hosea had some problem with his wife, but it was as an illustration that God was using to the world, because his children had gotten so far off. They'd just gone way off the brink, and they were going so far away that he couldn't turn them around without an illustration that just grabbed their heart. So he said, Hosea, you have to go out there and do this. Now, what a painful thing, but that's an illustration of how much Jesus loves us and what pain he must go through when we go back out into the world and we turn from him and we mess ourselves up with all these worldly things. Yeah, Hosea had a problem, but God had an answer. The church has a problem today, but God has the answer.